Episode 6. The Emperor's Redemption. The first cry echoed through the labyrinth, a sound so pure and filled with life that it momentarily stilled the chaotic energy of the castle. Jade held her son, Nicholas, close, her 7 anchors gathered around her, their faces reflecting a mixture of awe and tenderness. He was perfect, a tiny being radiating a power that already felt immense. He had dark hair like Loki, Ben's gentle eyes, and a dusting of freckles across his nose like Edgar's, a beautiful amalgamation of all of them. "He's extraordinary," Jareth breathed, his mismatched eyes shining with unshed tears. "He is," Jade whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "A miracle." The first few weeks after Nicholas's birth were a whirlwind of adjusting to new parenthood while simultaneously maintaining their roles as guardians of the multiverse. The goblins, surprisingly adept at childcare, flitted about offering unsolicited advice and tiny handcrafted toys. Bucky proved to be a natural with infants, his gentle strength a calming presence. Ben used his connection to the Force to soothe Nicholas when he was fussy, creating calming waves of energy that eased his cries. Freddy, being Freddy, insisted on crafting elaborate dreamscapes for the baby to visit while he slept, though Jade gently steered him away from anything remotely nightmarish. Snape, surprisingly, became the designated potion maker, concocting soothing balms and tonics to ensure Nicholas's health. Edgar wrote lullabies, beautiful, melancholic verses that somehow managed to be both comforting and profound. And Loki mostly used his magic to conjure endless supplies of diapers, much to everyone's amusement. But a shadow lingered over their joy. Palpatine. He remained confined to his isolated dwelling, meticulously adhering to the magical constraints they had placed upon him. He sent occasional messages, not requests for freedom, but simple inquiries about Nicholas. He'd ask about his health, his habits, his tiny expressions. Jade, along with her anchors, read each message with a careful scrutiny, searching for a hint of manipulation, of the darkness they all knew resided within him. They found none, just a quiet desperation, a longing for connection they hadn't expected. The initial distrust was palpable. Ben, in particular, struggled. He refused to even look at the messages. The very idea of Palpatine being allowed to exist, let alone inquire about his son, a searing betrayal of everything his father had been. I can reconcile this," he said to Jade one evening, pacing their chambers. "He murdered my father. He corrupted me. He brought so much suffering to the galaxy. How can we just let him be?" Jade gently took his hand, pulling him close. "I understand your pain, Ben. I truly do. But he's not the same man he was. The bindings are holding him, yes, but it's more than that. He's changing. I can feel it. He's actively suppressing the darkness within him. It's exhausting for him, I know, but he's doing it." "He's pretending to," Ben argued. "It's a trick. He's waiting for an opportunity to strike." "Maybe," Jade conceded, "but we're not defenseless. We have each other. We have our powers, and we have Nicholas. We'll protect him, I promise." Over time, however, even Ben began to see a shift in Palpatine. The messages became less frequent, but more intimate. He shared philosophical musings, observations about the nature of power and corruption, insights gleaned from centuries of experience. He offered advice on Nicholas's health, suggestions based on ancient healing practices from worlds long forgotten. It was surprisingly helpful. Slowly, cautiously, the others began to soften their stance. Loki, ever the pragmatist, admitted that Palpatine's magical proficiency was a valuable resource, should they ever need it. Snape discovered a shared intellectual curiosity with the former Emperor, engaging in lengthy correspondence on the complexities of dark magic and its potential for redemption. Even Freddy, after teasing him relentlessly, seemed to begrudgingly respect Palpatine's ability to understand the darker currents of the psyche. "The old man's got guts, I'll give him that," Freddy said one evening, leaning against the wall in the Great Hall. "Voluntarily stripping yourself of power after having it for millennia? That takes a special kind of crazy." Jade, however, maintained a cautious distance. She allowed the others to interact with Palpatine, to build a cautious friendship, but she herself refused to visit him. The memories of his reign, the stories of his cruelty, were too fresh, too painful. She couldn't bring herself to look at the man who had caused so much suffering. Until one day, when Nicholas fell ill. A strange fever gripped him, baffling their combined medical skills. The potion Snape concocted had no effect. The force healing Ben attempted offered only temporary relief. Nicholas cried incessantly, his tiny body burning with a heat that felt unnatural. Desperate, Jade turned to the one being who possessed knowledge beyond their own, Palpatine. She sent him a message, a plea for help, barely bothering to control the frantic energy that fueled her words. To her surprise, he responded immediately, offering a diagnosis and a remedy based on a rare herb found only on a desolate, forgotten planet. "It's a long shot," Palpatine's reply came back, "but it's the only thing I can think of. I can guide you, if you'll allow me." Reluctantly, Jade agreed. She allowed Palpatine to open a controlled portal, guiding her through the treacherous terrain of the desolate planet. He didn't accompany her physically, the constraints preventing it, but he directed her every step, his knowledge of the environment proving invaluable. When she returned, exhausted but with the precious herb in hand, she found her anchors waiting, their faces etched with worry. Snape quickly identified the herb and brewed it into a tonic. Within hours, Nicholas's fever began to break. He was going to be all right. Jade, overwhelmed with relief, found herself drawn to Palpatine's dwelling. She walked through the gardens, past the stark, minimalist architecture, and finally stood before his door. She hesitated for a moment, then knocked. Palpatine answered, his face gaunt and shadowed. He hadn't been sleeping. She could see it in the dark circles under his eyes. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice rough. "It's not safe." "You saved my son," Jade said, her voice trembling. "I needed to thank you." He stepped aside, allowing her to enter. The dwelling was sparsely furnished, almost monastic. A simple table, a few chairs, and a large window overlooking the muted landscape. But what struck her was the emptiness, the profound sense of isolation. "You've been very brave," Jade said, walking toward him. "To give up everything you were, to accept these constraints, it takes incredible strength." Palpatine looked down at his hands, as if surprised by their continued existence. "I was tired," he admitted. "Tired of the darkness, tired of the lies, tired of being alone." He looked up at her then, and for the first time, Jade saw a vulnerability in his eyes that touched her deeply. It wasn't the calculated manipulation of a master manipulator. It was the raw, naked vulnerability of a soul desperately seeking redemption. "I've been watching you," he said quietly. "Watching you with Nicholas, with your anchors. The love you share is something I haven't known, something I thought didn't exist." Jade stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch his face. He flinched, anticipating a blow, but she simply cupped his cheek, her thumb tracing the lines of his scarred skin. "You deserve happiness," she said softly. "You deserve love. Everyone does." Palpatine closed his eyes, and a single tear traced a path down his weathered face. "I don't deserve it," he whispered. "Then let me tell you something," Jade said, her voice firm and gentle. "You're wrong." And then, she kissed him. It wasn't a passionate, consuming kiss like the ones she shared with Jureth or Loki or Ben. It was a tentative, exploratory kiss. a slow unveiling of vulnerability and trust. It was a promise of healing, of hope, of a future they hadn't dared to imagine. As she kissed him, she felt a shift within herself, a softening of the resistance she'd been holding onto for so long. She realized that forgiveness wasn't about condoning the past. It was about recognizing that everyone, even the darkest of souls, deserved a chance at redemption. The kiss deepened, and a warmth spread through her, a feeling of completion she hadn't known she was missing. It wasn't a replacement for the love she shared with her other anchors. It was an addition, a new facet of a love that knew no boundaries. When they finally broke apart, Palpatine looked at her, his eyes filled with a hope that both terrified and exhilarated her. What was that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jade smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "A beginning," she said. "A new beginning." Over the following months, Palpatine's integration into their family was gradual but profound. He remained confined to his dwelling, but Jade visited him often, sharing stories about Nicholas, about the challenges and joys of motherhood. He proved to be a surprisingly insightful confidant, offering wisdom and guidance gleaned from centuries of experience. He also discovered a newfound passion for gardening, transforming the desolate landscape around his dwelling into a vibrant oasis of life. Slowly, cautiously, the others began to accept him as well. Jareth, always interested in the darker aspects of the multiverse, engaged him in philosophical debates about power and morality. Loki delighted in teasing him, deliberately provoking him with mischievous comments just to see him react. Then, still wary, found himself drawn into discussions about the Force, recognizing a depth of understanding in Palpatine that he hadn't expected. Even Snape found a common ground with the former Emperor in their shared love of knowledge and their commitment to pushing the boundaries of magical understanding. And then, one evening, in the heart of the labyrinth, Jade made a decision that would forever alter the dynamics of their already extraordinary family. She gathered her 7 anchors, along with Palpatine, in the Great Hall. Nicholas slept peacefully in her arms, his tiny form radiating a comforting warmth. "I want to share something with all of you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Something that I've been struggling with for a long time." She looked at each of them in turn, her eyes filled with love and vulnerability. "I realized that what I feel for Palpatine is more than just gratitude, more than just forgiveness. It's a deep, profound connection, and I want to explore that connection. I want to add him to our circle." A stunned silence descended upon the hall. Ben stared at her in disbelief. Jareth looked intrigued. Loki's lips curved into a knowing smile. Snape's face was unreadable, and Freddy simply raised an eyebrow. "You want to... what now?" Ben finally managed to stammer. "I want Palpatine to be my 8th partner," Jade said, her voice gaining strength. "I want him to be a father to Nicholas, alongside all of you. I want to share my life, my love, my everything with him." The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. Then Jareth spoke. "Well, that certainly complicates things," he said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "But who are we to judge? Love is a chaotic force. It does what it wants." Loki nodded in agreement. "I always did say you had a penchant for collecting broken toys, Nexus. Now you've added the biggest, most dangerous toy of them all." Then, after a long, agonizing pause, finally nodded as well. "If this is what you want, Jade," he said, his voice tinged with resignation, "then I support you, Court. For Nicholas, and for all of us." Snape, surprisingly, offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. "A curious development," he said, "but not unwelcome. Palpatine, after all, is a man of considerable complexity." Freddy simply grinned, his sharp teeth flashing in the dim light. Well, things just got interesting. Jade turned to Palpatine, her heart pounding in her chest. He stood there, his face unreadable, his eyes locked on hers. He walked towards her, slowly and deliberately, and knelt before her, taking her hand in his. "I don't know what I've done to deserve this," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "but I will spend the rest of my days trying to be worthy of your love." He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a warmth and tenderness she had never thought she'd see. And then, he kissed her. This kiss was different than the first. It was a soft kiss that promised mutual trust and a binding of hearts. A kiss that tied together a life full of complexity and promised to give hope to worlds beyond imagining. Jade kissed him back, her smile bright and beautiful. And in that moment, bathed in the golden light of the labyrinth, it was official. She was the Nexus, and she had 8 anchors, 8 lovers, 8 fathers for her son. A family born from darkness and forged in light. And they were ready to face whatever the multiverse threw their way, together. Episode 7, 7 Year of Miracles. The labyrinth had seen many impossible things in its